Good afternoon, everyone. We have a few people already joining us online. We will start promptly at 2 o'clock, but thanks for joining already, and we'll get this thing going pretty soon. Good afternoon, everyone. We're having people rolling in to the webinar. We will be starting in just a few minutes. We are expecting almost 100 people or more, so just hang in there as people roll in, and we'll get this going. Good afternoon. For those who have just joined, thanks for logging in. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes and let a few more people join before we kick off this webinar. Hope everyone is having a great Thursday. I'm hailing in from beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio. Feels like summer here. It's been nice to be in bourbon country for the last couple days too. As usual, doing a lot of traveling, but really enjoying seeing a lot of our members down in this area. Okay, we've got people rolling in here. We actually have over 100 registrants and we're at about 40 joining. We will start in just a minute so we can keep on time, but welcome to the people that have just joined. We'll kick this off in just a minute or so. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is just a little bit after 2 o'clock and we like to start on time. So we really appreciate all of you joining today. I'm sure some more people will roll in as we get this going. So good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us today for our CBMA 2023 Claims Portal Review webinar. We have put on over a dozen webinars on CBMA since 2018, and we expect we will continue to produce information until the CBMA process is 100% settled. My name is Allison Levitt. I am the Managing Director of WSSA, the Wine and Spirits Shippers Association. I have been in the logistics business for almost 40 years and a licensed broker since 1986. I've been at the helm of WSSA for the last 10 years and definitely my favorite job that I have ever had so far in my life, and expect that I will finish out my career here. So it's an incredible organization and we have an incredible team and incredible alliances with other associations. We have a pretty big audience today, I said, with over 100 people registered. So we will be keeping everyone on mute and we will be utilizing the chat option for any questions. We will try to address chat questions as they come up, but any questions not addressed will be responded to after the webinar, and we will also compile a list of Q&As and share them with all of the participants. Before we get started, I do want to thank my team at WSSA for all the hard work they do on a daily basis to support me and support the industry and the work done on putting together our many programs. A special thank you to our CBMA guru, Jillian Carpenter. You'll see Jillian on the line here. She put this webinar together. She will be driving the slides and also trying to monitor the chat and answer questions. She will also be interrupting me with pertinent questions that would be interesting for everyone. So again, a huge thank you to Jillian. I know she's worked with many of you to achieve success in CBMA. She has worked with dozens of our members and literally filed for claims in the millions and millions and millions of dollars successfully. So she took a deep dive in CBMA when the law first was initiated and has been deeply involved ever since. Also, a big thank you to Gretchen Vievert. She's our program manager at WSSA. She's the one that puts together the registrations and communicates with everyone and is also our background tech expert. So hopefully we won't have any tech issues today, but Gretchen also always jumps in to help us on those issues. So what we are going to talk about today, we are not sharing legally binding information. We are not sharing details that are necessarily cut in stone. We are sharing what our observations, our suggestions, what we see as best practices as we enter into this next phase of CBMA. So before we get started on the CBMA, and Jillian, if you could just pop to the next slide, we just want to tell you a little bit about WSSA. I think most of you on the line are probably familiar with us, have attended webinars or events, but I always like to just give a little bit of background on who we are and what we do. We are one of the oldest shipping associations in the country, founded back in 1976. We have grown dramatically over the years, and the last 10 years, we have really focused on becoming a more global association. We have done things like webinars on Brexit, and are sending out messages on the changes in the tax structure in the UK. We've done events in many other countries at this point, and close to 50% of our membership is outside the USA. However, our number one mission remains the same: to negotiate competitive rates and services for our members, using the volume of the members to get the best service and rates that we can possibly get. During the last few years in the pandemic, we certainly leveraged our incredibly long-term partnerships with our ocean carriers to enable to basically to get cargo on vessels. Certainly wasn't at the lowest rate over the last couple of years, but those relationships allowed us to keep cargo moving in a time when it was extremely difficult to get space on vessels. The pendulum has swung way back. We're in a completely different situation than we were 6 months ago, and we are back into the negotiating for rates as well as the best services and differentiation among our carriers. So number one priority remains the same. Our other two pillars are also incredibly important to us as an organization and to the industry. We run what I feel is the best-in-class risk management program for beverage alcohol. We insure close to or actually over $1 billion worth of product, mostly alcohol, as well as corks, machinery, glass, you name it, anything that is related to the industry, whether it's shipping on land, on sea, intermodal, in warehouses. So if any of you have any questions in terms of the risk management landscape, let us know. We would be happy to take a look at your program. And finally, the last pillar is exactly what we're doing today: providing education to the industry, and also acting as your advocate and sharing information that we gather across many associations. I mentioned how important the other associations in this industry are. We work closely with DISCUS, with WSWA, with NABI, with the AgTC. We all have our skill sets, and at WSSA, our skill set is in the logistics and regulatory sphere, and we're very happy to work with the other associations on their skill sets, and collaboration has been key over the last few years that have been incredibly tumultuous. So let's move on to what we're here to talk about today. As you are on this webinar, and we'll get to the next slide if you can. Okay, the CBMA timeline. As you're on this webinar, you are probably quite familiar with Craft Beverage Modernization Act, and just really going to touch on some of the high points here. As noted on this timeline, CBMA was passed as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was signed into law by then President Trump at the end of 2017. The basics of the CBMA had been in the works for years, starting really with the craft beer industry and morphing over time to include all types of beverage alcohol. The surprise and the good news for importers at the time of passage was that certain imports would be eligible for the CBMA discounted tax rates. And eventually we had a system to get those benefits. Took a little while, but as of October 2018, the basics of CBMA were implemented, and you could get those tax rates at time of entry. So from October 2018 until January 1st, 2023, we've been following pretty much the same process to get the CBMA tax benefits for importers. We're now in what I would consider the final phase of CBMA, the full transition from CBP, U.S. Customs, which is under Department of Homeland Security, to TTB, which is under Department of Treasury. And the final item was the launch of the importer portal to file claims. While most of you are probably not happy that you have to pay the full tax upfront, this was the primary compromise to get permanence of the CBMA law. WSSA and many of the other associations dedicated to the beverage alcohol industry worked long and hard to get permanence for CBMA. And the two big changes were the upfront tax payment and the change in administration of the law from CBP to TTB. This brings us to where we are today. TTB had 2 years to prepare the modules to control and automate the CBMA system. And we are now in what I would call the refine and understand phase to get the system running as smoothly as it possibly can. So we're going to jump into kind of an overview of the current process. And again, this slide just represents an overview summary of the new process as it stands today. So from the foreign producer module that is now set up in the TTB system, to the tax payment and data elements, to the claims portal. Our primary focus today will be on the most common issues with the portals and primarily on the claims portal. We have done previous webinars on the foreign producer portal, and TTB has also conducted some webinars, and all in all, this is working well. On that third item, the CBMA data elements, as we want to point out that the job of the customs broker or filer, if you might be a self-filer, this part of the program remains extremely important and really didn't change with the transition from CBP to TTB. The input of correct data elements remains key. And you'll hear this a lot from us. While the CBP 155 document is no longer required, it is highly recommended to continue the use of this spreadsheet or something similar to keep track of the allocations, depletions, and the tax rates. So that's one of the highlights of this slide. Okay, now moving on to the portals. We are going to touch on the foreign producer portal on just a couple of the issues that we have seen since the beginning. We do hear from many people that as either if they're registering on behalf of the foreign producer or the foreign producer themselves is trying to register, they will many times will receive an error message when submitting their foreign producer registration. We have found that the most common errors that cause an error message are issues with the foreign producer FDA number or a duplicate registration. When you get an error message, if you're registering, the error message is not going to tell you what the specific error is. Eventually, and this is generally within 24 hours, you will receive an email directly from a TTB employee advising what the specifics are of the error. However, if you get that error message and you want to check yourself and quickly try to fix it, I would say check the FDA number. That is probably the #1 issue that we see in terms of the error. And this often happens if the producer has just recently renewed or reapplied for the FDA number, and there's a mismatch in the system. So our advice here is that look at the FDA number when you get an error message, check to see if it is correct, check with your producer if they've recently reapplied for an FDA number. And you can, if you find out it is incorrect and you get a correct one, you can immediately input that into the system and submit again. You don't have to wait for the TTB to send you the specifics on the error message. The allocation issue is the second issue that tends to come up a lot. If your producer provided incorrect allocations, the producer can go in and increase the allocation given to a particular importer. But if the allocation needs to be reduced, the importer needs to get involved. Reductions must be done via rejection of the allocation in the importer portal. As the importer portal was not available until recently, this did cause a lot of concern in the first few months. We're going to talk about adjusting these allocations a little later. But an example would be if the producer assigned the full 30,000 wine gallons at a tier 1 rate to one particular importer, to say importer A, but he meant to actually split it between importer A and importer B. Then they would have to reassign. So importer A would reject the allocation, and then the producer would then reissue the assignments to each importer. As said, we'll touch on this a bit later, but it is something that has come up a lot in the early months. If a producer tries to allocate more than the allowed quantity, then they will receive an error message when submitting. And this is one of the checks that allows the system to be more effectively monitored and enforced. Honestly, CBP was not able to monitor any duplicate allocations or over allocations because the system was so manual. So like it or not, I think this system is working to be more accurate in terms of enforcement and compliance with CBMA. Okay, next item we're going to just touch on is the issues with setting up importer accounts. So success in getting your CBMA account set up is linked to your Permits Online account. The key contact registered in your Permits Online in the TTB system is the party to set up the CBMA importer portal access. So when registering to set up the CBMA account, a link goes to that key contact to activate the CBMA portal. Thus, if someone goes in and tries to register from your company and they do not get the link, that most likely means they are not the party designated as the key contact in the Permits Online portal. So you can review and update some details that are in that portal, but other items such as a complete change in ownership or officers of the company, this generally needs to be submitted directly to TTB and can take a little time to get updated. So it's just one of the issues that has come up. It's also key to note that there is an authentication process for the key contacts and all users. This authentication process basically serves as an instant POA, power of attorney, to basically allow users to file on the company's behalf. So the authentication process requires proof of identification, and there are two options. You can do the authentication via login.gov or ID.me, as listed here on the slide. If you do not have a social security number, you must go to ID.me. This is now clear on the portal screen, but it has come up a few times, so we just wanted to point it out here. On the third point, we want to note that when the system started up, the entity manager, who's basically the key contact or the owner officer in the Permits Online system, did not have full visibility of the claims, only the parties that key contact noted as authorized users. So we heard that some of the entity managers were going in and couldn't see the actual claims. That now has been adjusted by TTB IT. They have advised us now that that entity manager will have full visibility. Initially, the entity manager had to add themselves as a user to see the claims. Again, if you have issues with that, please go to TTB or let us know. The final point here involves the types of users. The entity manager, the key contact, is the party that adds users. Users can be added as preparers or submitters. The preparer can, as it says, prepare only, and they cannot return assignments, and the preparer does not see sensitive information such as bank account data. The authorized submitter is the party authorized to actually submit the claim, and as noted, can have access to the bank account information should you, for example, be going with direct deposit option. Both the preparer and the submitter must go through that authentication process mentioned above with the proof of ID. So again, some of the things that have come up, questions that have come to us, hopefully these points help understand how the system works a little more. All right, we're going to move on to the claims portal and some of the common issues. So we've listed items that we have seen as the most common errors that will prevent your customs entries from eligibility for the claim. I will say in the filings that we've handled for people and what members have advised to us and talking to other brokers, almost every claim has had a few discrepancies with errors affecting eligibility. So again, just want to run through some of these that are the most common that we've seen. Invalid foreign producer ID. This could be a broker input error, or it could be that the system is not picking up the ID. So if the broker just input the incorrect foreign producer ID, they can go in and correct it in the entry and submit APSC, post summary correction. However, if everything in the system is correct, and the foreign producer ID is accurate, then this will go into the manual claim bucket. We'll talk a bit more about manual claims, but some of these items just cannot be fixed online. Invalid import date. This is probably the main issue that we see for warehouse withdrawals. And it may indeed be a system issue with TTB because we've heard about it a few times, that the warehouse withdrawal dates are not populating in the importer claims portal. So again, first check on that. If you're going in the portal and you don't see these dates, check with your broker to make sure that the date is indeed input and correct. If it is in there and it has been submitted correctly, then this will also go into the manual claim bucket. No valid foreign producer assignment. In this case, the producer ID could be valid, but there's no assignment registered for your account in the system. So the first step when you see that error is to check your portal account and make sure that that foreign producer indeed shows as allocating to you. If it is not there, then you can go through the steps and speak with your producer to get that allocation added if it is valid. If it is in the system correctly and you're still getting this error, then the first step is actually to go to TTB and advise them that it seems to be a system error and the allocation is not, the assignment is not showing up. I think another thing here is that you always need to make sure that everything matches up. So the producer assignment is connected to the right basic permit, and the right basic permit is on the entry. So everything does need to match in the entry to make sure that the claims are properly populating. Invalid estimated tax amount. This has come up primarily when related to reduced taxes for flavor content designation. It seems to trigger if the full tax is not paid in on the entry. For example, this happens primarily with spirits. The normal rate is the $13.50 per proof gallon. If you have a flavor content discount and a lower tax rate is paid, it can trigger an error. It's usually related to the fact that the broker did not put the Y designation for yes on a flavor content credit in the data elements. So that is part of the data elements. And if you do have both a flavor content discount plus CBMA eligibility, that Y designation must be included in the data elements. And this last one, quantity over assignment limit. I would say this is one of the main items that we see. It is the one that we have highlighted here on the screen, the error message assignment limit partially exceeded. And it's usually because the allocations and depletions are not properly monitored and the broker has put the wrong information in, exceeding a particular tier or exceeding an allocation limit. When the new system started, the general feeling from brokers was that they are no longer responsible or required to keep the CBP 155 worksheet to keep track of the allocations and depletions. That is true. It is not a requirement, but we cannot stress this point enough. Somebody must keep track and communicate this information to the broker. This could be the broker, this could be a third party, this could be, your internal audits. It's certainly one of the things we do at WSSA, and Jillian works with a lot of companies to just do this monitoring, keep track of their allocations, depletions, tax rates, provide that data to the broker, so the broker isn't the only party responsible for getting these data elements correct. So we do recommend that second set of eyes, sometimes a third set of eyes, when it comes to monitoring these assignments. When corrections are needed in the assignment issues, they can be corrected via PSC, post-summary correction, but this does cause delays and can cost money. Most brokers do charge for filing a PSC. So keep in mind that it is not just the broker's responsibility to take care of all these elements. As the importer, you are ultimately the one responsible. So it's just something to consider when you're looking at your whole CBMA program. One other comment on the errors. As you can see on this screen, we're getting the error assignment limit partially exceeded. There could be other errors in this entry as well. So when you get an error message, it won't say that there's two other errors that are in there. It'll give you sort of the main error, but there could be other errors. So when you do get an error, check everything. You don't want to submit again and have another error. So try to just make sure that all of that information is right when you do go in and make a correction. Okay, Jillian, any questions on any of this that have come in? Anything you want to add?
Someone asked if on the importer portal, if a submitter could also prepare the claim. And that is something, yes, a submitter can do everything. Prepare, submit, return assignments.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And again, Jillian, jump in with anything you want to add. That you are the one actively doing this and the true expert here. So, Okay, some of the other common issues here. So line items not showing up in the claims portal, even though the data elements have been entered correctly. So this has happened, and this, there are going to be some system glitches. I would say overall, the flow from the custom system, the A system, into the TTB system is working extremely well, but we have heard instances where the data is not flowing. So if the broker has actually put in all the data elements correctly and their line items are in there in the system and they're not showing up in the claims portal, this can't be PSC because the entry is correct. So this will have to turn into a manual claim, as it does apparently mean that there is a system error. Next item on here, brokers inputting incorrect data elements resulting in over allocation. This is basically what we just talked about, the broker inputting incorrect, generally incorrect allocation in the system, incorrect tax rate. And those can be corrected on the PSC. Once the updates are corrected, they almost immediately flow back into the system and you can file your claim. So again, that comes back to tracking the data. The final item on the screen is brokers inputting the incorrect TTB basic permit number. This has happened many, many times. Some of you have multiple permit numbers. Sometimes permit numbers have changed. And this has really not been visible to brokers before. So they may have a TTB permit number on file for you that was, 20 years ago, or that, was a different state, or you name it. So it just makes sure your broker has the correct basic permit number to use. But this is one of the areas that cannot be corrected on a PSC. This has to be corrected via the manual claim system. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about manual claims, since that's been a hot item here. Oh, sorry. We're first going to talk about returning assignments. I'm out of order here. Okay, sorry, Jillian. Okay, returning assignments. I think this did just come up when Jillian was talking about submitters, but submitters are the only party that can return the assignments in the claims portal. You can return the full amount available, and if a claim has been filed against the assigned amount, of course, that is not available for return. So indeed, if you have been allocated 30,000 wine gallons and you have used 20,000 wine gallons in the first quarter, you obviously cannot return 30,000. You can return 10,000 that have not been used. So it's just something to be aware of. As noted, once that assignment is returned, then the supplier, your foreign producer, can go back into the producer portal and reassign correct assignments. Once the producer has done that, this is almost an instantaneous process. So there's no big delays when you are returning assignments and then the producer is reassigning to the correct parties. So it is a bit of a pain in the neck, especially the fact that the importer has to be the one to return assignments, but it does work. Okay, now I think we're ready to talk about some manual claims. Okay, and when I say manual, it's not necessarily it's not a true manual submission. It is a manual claim within the portal. So we've touched on a few of the issues that require manual claims already, but the one that we haven't, and one of the most important ones, is on the warehouse entries. So for pre-2023 tax paid imports that you now get in, say, so you've got a 2022 tax paid import. In 2023, you get an assignment from a producer. That process remains the same. The entry can be corrected via PSC, post summary correction, or a protest, and updated in the system so you can get your CBMA benefits on those 22 tax paid entries in what I would call the old system, so via customs. If you have warehouse entries, bonded entries that were made in 2022, and you're withdrawing them in 2023, these items have to be filed for CBMA on the manual claim basis. So that is kind of a big differential. A lot of you probably have imports from 2022 sitting in bonded warehouse that you're pulling out in 2023. And unfortunately, those need to be done through the manual claim process. The other area where you cannot file directly in the importer portal is if the entry has already liquidated. So if the entry is liquidated and you have incorrect data in that entry, it must be filed through the manual claim process. We talked about the TTB permit number, and we talked about the system errors where the data just isn't populating in the importer portal. Those items do have to be done on the manual claim basis. The specific approval, there are certain circumstances where importers have requested specific approval to file solely in the manual claim basis, and that is assigned directly by TTB. Okay, just continuing on the manual claims template, we've got it here on the screen. It is really quite similar to the CBP 155 worksheet that many of you are used to or your brokers were used to. You can download the spreadsheets from the system, fill it out, and upload it via the manual claim area of the portal. So we would suggest if you do have a lot of withdrawals from those 2022 imports that were in bonded warehouses and you're pulling them out one after the other in 2023, I would suggest that you keep a running tally on the spreadsheet so you don't have to do it all at once and you've got a clear picture of what your CBMA claim is going to be on those withdrawals. Just a note on that consumption entry number. So on withdrawals, enter the consumption entry number used on the withdrawal in that far left item that is pointed out on the box on the left field. The other kind of unusual thing here, I'd say, considering CBMA has always been driven on gallons, proof gallons, wine gallons. In the manual claim, it is the unit of measure is in liters and not gallons. That the customs entries also are in liters, so that data should be right on your customs entry, but the CBMA measurements are still in gallons. So just to point that out. And Jillian, anything you want to add on the manual claims?
No, not yet. Nothing
Okay.
yet.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so some of the best practices that we have just kind of developed over time, and these are pretty basic, but we just want to reiterate them here. Obviously, it's much better if your foreign producers can get their registrations and assignments done in the producer portal before you make your customs entries. So that will just prevent you from having to go back and do PSCs or potentially manual claims. Again, providing your broker with all of the necessary information they need to correctly input the data elements. So those foreign producer IDs, the rate designations, get as much information to the broker, and then decide who is tracking those allocations and depletions and how you're managing that. Again, tracking. Maintain that tracker for all the entries, whether it is under your broker's doing that, whether you're doing it, whether you have WSSA doing that. Just make sure somebody's doing it. And of course, auditing the claim. So that internal tracker, it can be make it extremely easy to audit your claims. If you've been keeping that tracker for all the producer allocations, tax rates, everything that has been imported, and you're expecting to get a $50,000 refund, $200,000 refund. If you've got it all done, and then when you go into the importer portal or have your whoever is handling that for you go into the portal and everything matches up, you can be pretty confident that your claim is correct and that you don't need to spend hours and hours going through each line item. So again, just some of the suggestions that we have in terms of maintaining the best possible scenario to get your claims done quickly and paid quickly. And I think speaking of payments, is our next slide on the refunds? Is that where we are? Okay, so yeah, everybody wants to know when their refunds are coming. The good news is that we have many reports that importers who have filed claims in April are getting their refunds. So either via direct deposit or check, depending on what you choose. So refunds are flowing in. Now, part of the compromise in getting CBMA to permanence was that TTB will not have to pay interest if they pay back the claims within 90 days of the filing date. As most of you know, that in the days of PSCs and protests and getting your money back in the, shall we say, the old system, you would get interest. We did fight this. We do feel this is an overpayment of tax at time of entry. This battle was not won, but we do have that 90-day window. So if there is any delay from TTB, then you will get interest. If they pay within those 90 days, no interest will be paid. But the good news is the system is working. And I think our biggest fear as we were going into this was, would that data transfer work? Government agencies are not necessarily known to be incredibly efficient. And I do have to hand it to both CBP and TTB, who worked together to make sure that this data did flow from one system to the other. And the good news is that it is working. That is said, we wanted to make this one pretty short and sweet, and kind of just a quick overview of where we are now. And as we said, we have been doing everything and anything related to CBMA. And one of the things I do want to highlight from this slide is the assist with the outreach to oh my goodness, where is this on here? I'm looking at my screen. When we are working with distributors, primarily the wholesalers tier, that assisting with the outreach to producers. So what we have done with many of the wholesalers is actually work with them to get allocations. To me, the wholesaler tier is the one that is kind of last on the totem pole when it comes to CBMA, and trying to actually get allocations has not been an easy process. So we have been working with those distributors to try to review their producers. We certainly know the ones that are not going to give allocations. They're either using it all themselves or they have domestic production. But we really have put a lot of time into getting distributors allocations. And maybe it's 20,000, maybe it's 200,000, but getting what I would call free money back to them. We certainly will help on all the other basics of the portals, producer registration, the actual filing of the claims, the tracking. So anything you might need with CBMA, please reach out to us. This is Jillian's lifeblood, and she is the true expert and has been a great asset to the industry. So reach out to us with any questions, concerns. Opening it up. Any other questions coming in on the chat, or if anyone does have questions, now is the time to ask.
One is asking, how do we find out who the key contact is for our importer? I have the MyTTB account, but was not given authorization to view our producers. So for the key contact is in the permits online account, and that's going to be an owner officer of the company. And they should be able to access their permits online account and view the key contact information. And then that key contact has to set up the MyTTB account and add all the authorized users within the company or a third party who they want to either review or submit these claims. And if I'm not sure I follow that. I don't have authorization to view our producers. You're not going to be able to view your producers foreign portal at all. All you're going to be able to review are the assignments that you've received from all your producers in your CBMA portal. You will not be able to access your foreign producer portal.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions just on contacts. How do we get through to the TTB? We have numerous emails and phone numbers for the TTB, and I will say the staff there has been quite accessible and quick to answer. I'm not sure if they have a general CBMA email. Do they, Jillian?
I don't think so. I have one. I have a specific contact, but there is. You have to submit a request online, and then someone will reach out to you. So we can share that link after the webinar.
Yeah, and I think they can, when they do respond, it generally is from a specific staffer. So they do have a solid team working on CBMA. And they will actually be doing another webinar. They've done quite a few webinars on the process. I think they have one now scheduled for, is it next Thursday, the 23rd? Next Tuesday. So, and we find with their webinars, they literally do tend to announce them 2 days before they do them. we had actually invited them to join us on this webinar for at least for the Q&A. They tend to like to do their own, which is totally fine. And I think they have been doing a great job with the outreach. So you will, if you join that webinar as well, you'll meet some of the team. And many of you have probably been on the other TTB webinars. So I know, again, we can provide the couple email contacts as well as the portal link. And said they've been very quick to respond to questions via email and via phone. A little harder to reach them on the phone, I find, but for sure, email's been pretty good.
And then I got a few more questions that I can answer live. It says, do you have to return an assignment if you have over allocated, or can it lapse at the end of the year? So if you've over allocated an assignment, the portal won't let you over allocate. So that's not going to be an issue. But if you have an assignment and you're an importer and you haven't used the full amount, at the end of the year, yes, you can return it, and then the producer can assign it to another importer if they have one. But if it's not used at the end of the year, and you're not going to use it, then it's basically, it doesn't carry over to the next year. It's just voided. And then there is a question, do you have a step-by-step guide on how to submit the claims on the portal? We do not, but TTB just released, they actually have a step-by-step YouTube video for this, and we will send that out. We are actually going to send out a mailer with the announcing their webinar next week and we'll include that link to the YouTube of the how-to guide. And then, is there any more information on how TTB will be identifying the control groups? Are they auditing the foreign producer registrations? And yes, they are. They are.
And I think, on the control groups too, when we were initially talking about the foreign producers, the first advice from TPB was that every single producer, say within a control group, would do individual foreign producer registrations. They changed their tune a little bit on that in terms of having the controlled group register multiple producers. Now, either way works. I do think that is a bit of a work in progress for TTB to figure out exactly how they are managing controlled groups. It could be one of those things that will change in following subsequent years once they just tweak the system, because that has been a little bit of a flip-flop with them. I do think it is still challenging for them to completely monitor the controlled groups, but the questions in the foreign producer portal certainly assist them with those audits.
And then we don't really have any more questions.
Excellent. Well, I think that speaks to the fact that the system is working, and I think again using some of these suggestions and making sure that you are tracking the allocations, depletions. Hopefully, this has been helpful to everybody, and really appreciate everybody signing on and attending. Any specific questions that come up after the fact, let us know. If new things come up, new problems, new glitches, let us know. We're happy to look into any of those and discuss with TTB. As I said, we will circulate on our mailing list the TTB webinar and that YouTube video. And
I've got one more question I can
okay,
answer really quick. Do we need to file for the credit within the quarter the wine is received? No, you do not. You can file for Q1, obviously in Q2, once the quarter is complete, and then you have, I believe, 3 years to file a claim.
Yeah, and that's what the other good news, the TTB statute for filing claims is 3 years. The CBP statute was much less than that. So there is opportunity to, extend that kind of claim period. I think that will be really good for importers. I think there were a lot of people at the beginning of the CBMA process that were not able to get their claims filed timely. And this ended up with some, certainly loss of potential refunds. So the 3-year statute is a little bit better.
And then
The
one
last one, yeah, go ahead, yeah.
One more, do you need paper copies of the assigning entity certificates? No, when you're doing the manual claim for the withdrawals for 2023 imports that were withdrawn in 2022 imports that were withdrawn in 2023, you just have to upload all those required documents. You don't need a paper copy.
Oh, and thank you for mentioning that. That was the piece I left out when we were talking about those warehouse withdrawals. So it is sort of the only area right now where you still need to have all kind of what we would call the traditional CBMA documents.
Right.
So.
All right.
All right, everyone. Thank you. We are right about 45 minutes. We were hoping to get this all done in 45 and to be respectful of everybody's time. So again, thank you. I hope this was useful and look forward to seeing many of you at other webinars or WSSA events, port tours, you name it, and anything, other issues that you might want us to address. There's a lot going on in the industry right now. We're talking to a lot of people about what's happening in California with the Clean Truck Act and going to zero emissions and what the impact is of that legislation. We're doing some deep dives into OSRA 22 and whether or not we can go after some of the demurrage that was, shall we say, unreasonably charged during the pandemic. But OSRA 22 is something we are going to be super involved in terms of working with any of you and all of the importers that may have issues with especially demurrage and detention billing and compliance with OSRA. So any of those issues hit home with you, let us know, and we're happy to address them. So again, thank you, and we'll see y'all soon.